Welcome to the Dinosaur George podcast, a show about paleontology and other earth sciences. Dinosaur George is a public speaker, author, and TV host with 30 years of study in paleontology. He has performed live in over 4,500 events across the US and Canada. Now, here is Dinosaur George.
Well, hey there. Good morning, everybody. I hope you are all doing well. It's great, again, to be back in the studio and being able to record a couple of more podcasts. Exciting news. I am traveling. Today is Tuesday. Don't even know the date. See if I can find the date. Today is Tuesday, the 8th of August. I'm traveling this Friday to Gibbons, Canada, which is just outside of Edmonton. I will be speaking at Jurassic Forest on August the 12th and 13th, which is a Saturday and Sunday. You can go to Jurassic Forest website, which is jurassicforest.com. If you've never been there, it's really cool. It's got the robotic dinosaurs, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen those robot dinosaurs. But what I really like about this place is that they are set up in environments that look so amazing. Big conifer trees, pine trees, whatever the heck they are. But it's so cool looking because rather than stick them outside in big, flat, open parking lots, which you see a lot, these are positioned to look like the animals are actually within an environment, and it's really cool. I plan on taking my video equipment with me and shooting some video, and so I might make a video on YouTube about just that. Speaking of YouTube, everybody who's watching on YouTube, thank you guys for joining me. Somebody wrote to me on YouTube and made a suggestion, kind of cool one actually. Every now and then, I do a live feed from my Facebook page. And I walk through my museum and I show some stuff. And somebody said, man, could you make some short videos about the individual pieces? Like, for instance, Deinosuchus. There's an animal that you never see that much about. You see images of crocodiles and that, but you don't get to really see the skull. So what I think I'm going to do when the new school year starts, which is September for us down here in Texas, really, I'm going to start doing short video vignettes. Now, this will just be on YouTube, but I'll do little vignettes about each animal, short, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes at the most, about each individual piece. Now, I've got over 150 pieces, so that could be a lot of them, but they'll be short, they'll be to the point, they'll be kind of cool. So it was a good suggestion, and I do appreciate the person that wrote to me that made that suggestion. I do like it. So anyway, back to Jurassic Forest. I'm going to be out of Jurassic Forest. I'm going to film some stuff. I'll put a video out about them. I plan on interviewing the director of there about the facility to talk more about it. So look for that. And also, we are gearing up now for our busy season, which starts again in September. And in September, we begin to travel pretty much nonstop with the traveling museum and my lectures and that kind of stuff. So hopefully I'll meet some of you guys in person. And again, for everybody, when I say guys, I'm not talking about males. I'm talking about people. I just use guys as the common phrase. But I hope to be able to meet some of you guys in person and get to talk to you. And I read all the stuff you post on Facebook. I do. I mean, not Facebook, but YouTube. I do read the comments. I don't have a lot of time to respond, but I do enjoy hearing from you all. Also, in this episode, I'm going to interview a good friend of mine, paleontologist Nathan Van Vranken. Nathan is an up-and-coming paleontologist who is really dove headfirst into the science, and he's involved in a lot of publications, which is probably second to finding something is publishing about it. That's one of the most important things, because if a paleontologist does not publish legitimate scientific work, then everything he or she has found almost becomes irrelevant, because other paleontologists and other people who like the science need to be able to read and understand what's being discovered. And so it's people like Nathan who are out there working really hard to try to promote as much as he can. And I talk a little bit in detail about what he does with that. So again, anybody up in the Edmonton area in Canada, I'm going to be in Gibbons, Canada, August 12th and 13th at Jurassic Forest. If you live up in that area, please come out there. I'd love to meet you, love to talk to you. I'll have my sound equipment with me. I'll be able to record you. So if you have a Ask DG question you want to submit, well, then by all means, you'll be able to submit it. And after Nathan's interview, I'll answer a couple of questions on the Ask DG segment. So let me catch my breath, kind of help promote an item again, once again, to help pay the bills. And so let's go.
It was the largest predator in North America and known simply as the King. Now you can own fossil replicas from Tyrannosaurus Rex, the king of the dinosaurs. Our online store is filled with T-Rex teeth, claws, skulls, and more. Display them in your room or office, or use them as teaching aids in the classroom. Our prices are affordable, and we don't add excessive shipping fees. They are great gifts for anyone who likes dinosaurs. Go to store.dinosaurgeorge.com to see our wide selection.
Speaking of T-Rex, the item that I want to highlight for this particular podcast is a T-Rex tooth with a base. Now, these are replicas. I don't sell authentics. The item is item number 3090. It retails for $9.95. It's about 3 inches long, and I tell you why I really like this particular one. A good friend of mine actually found this while he was hunting in the Hell Creek Formation in South Dakota. He uncovered this thing, and it was in such cool condition, and the serrations were so nice on it, we decided to make a mold of it. And so this is a copy. We also made kind of a cool little base, a little flat base. The tooth fits right down inside of it, and you can display it on your desk or on a shelf or something like that. But what I like is you can take it off of the base and see it three-dimensionally. This is a really cool item, and I hope that if you guys want to add something cool, you will consider buying that. Again, it's item number 3090. You can find it on my website, store.dinosaurgeorge.com. And I hope it's cool. By the way, I told you it was found in the Hell Creek. Let me tell you, an upcoming podcast that will be coming out later on, next several days. I did an interview with an individual that takes people out into the field to dig. You don't have to be a professional. You're going to want to pay attention to this because it's really cool. That'll be coming up in a future podcast / video, and that'll be coming out very soon. So let's jump in now and let's take a listen, or let's answer some of the questions on the Ask Dino George segment.
It's time to Ask Dinosaur George. In this segment, George answers your questions about paleontology. If you would like to leave a voice message, call us at 210-888-9077. This is not a toll-free call, so children, please ask your parents' permission. If you would like to submit your question in writing, go to dinosaurgeorge.com and click the Ask Dinosaur George page. Questions are chosen at random and we clear all messages monthly. So if you have a question about paleontology, ask Dinosaur George.
All right, this first question was one that was phoned in to us on our phone line. So let's take a listen.
Hi, DG. This is Dennis Taylor from Englewood, New Jersey. I have not so much a question, but a comment to make. On one of your latest podcasts, I noticed that someone was trying to figure out what you call baby dinosaurs, like, say, a baby hadrosaur or a baby ceratopsian. I was thinking the name calf might be kind of appropriate. Of course, that's just my theory. I mean, I know we call theropods chicks, but to me, calling something like a Edmontosaur youngster or a Pachyrhinosaur youngster a calf would kind of make a bit of sense.
Hey, it's so good to hear from you. You know what? That's a pretty good point. What he was talking about was that in a previous podcast, the question came up, what do you call baby dinosaurs? And my answer was, well, you call theropods chicks, but I wasn't quite certain how would we refer to herbivores? How would we refer to their young? And his point was, maybe we should call them a calf. Like, for instance, and a calf is used oftentimes to describe mammals, but doesn't mean it's wrong. I actually kind of like that. In a big animal, what would you call a baby ceratopsian? What would you call a baby hadrosaur? What would you call a baby sauropod? I heard one sauropodlet, which I thought sounded absolutely hilarious. But even if they get up to be, a year or so old, maybe calf is a good descriptive word to use when naming them. That's actually kind of cool, man. Thank you so much for the question and for the comment. I actually like that quite a bit, and I agree with you. I think that would have been cool. All right, let's jump in. This is Mohammed from Edmonton, Canada. Hey, man, I'm coming up there. Hey, DG, I traveled to London, and I'm sorry if you can't meet me and my family. Oh, man. Mohammed, I'm so sorry to hear that you guys won't be there, but London is an absolute beautiful place, I'm sure. And so good for you that you get to go. I'm happy for you guys. All right. Mohammed's question is, how many individuals in a group of Deinonychus do you think there would be? I think 20 is a maximum amount. Well, Mohammed, when you're talking about predation and you're talking about groups of predators, one of the things that has to be there is some sort of limitation on how many can be there before it's no longer beneficial. For a couple of reasons. One, camouflage. Where do you hide? It's hard enough to hide 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of you. But if there's 30 or 40 or 50 of you, where do you hide? Where animals can't see you long before you can take advantage of them. In other words, if you're running across an open prairie and there's 30 or 40 of you, just the dust and sound alone would give so much advance warning to your prey that have time to flee. So it's much better to hunt in a smaller, more moderate-sized group. I think when you're talking about Deinonychus, I suspect maybe your max of 20 is probably accurate. Might be even less than that. Maybe more like maybe 10 to 12 or 13 possibly. I don't know why you pulled 13 out of there. But anyway, I think a smaller group is more beneficial. The size of the group is determined by a couple of factors. How small is the dinosaur and how large are their prey? And that would be the determining factor for how many you need to be able to take on something bigger than yourself. If you're going to hunt Tenontosaurus, and the fossil record clearly demonstrates they did hunt Tenontosaurus, then how many Deinonychus would it take to bring down an average Tenontosaurus? And I don't know the answer to that, unfortunately, but it's not going, you might think, well, boy, if they ran around a pack of 40, nobody could get away from them. Oh, that's true, but everybody would see you before you could get a chance to do anything. So I don't believe that the pack size would be giant, but maybe you're right, Mohammed, maybe about 20. Sorry that I'm going to miss meeting you and your family and getting to see you guys, but that happens and there's always next year. All right, Greg from Toronto, Canada, another person from Canada. This is cool. And let me tell you guys, the people that pull these questions for me, they have no idea what episode it's for. They don't look to see what we're going to be discussing. So it's not like, because I'm going to Canada, they went through and pulled people from Canada. That's not how it works. We receive hundreds of these things a day, and they randomly go down and they read them really quick, and they pull those out that they think are interesting or something that hasn't been asked before. A lot of you ask me questions that I've answered so many times. It doesn't mean I'm not going to answer them again. It just means that it's more difficult to spend a lot of time, the limited time we have, on repeating the same answers over and over again. All right, Greg from Toronto, Canada. Hey, DG, I watched your videos since your first one. My question is, did Triceratops roll in the mud to cool down like elephants and rhinos? Well, Greg, nice to hear from you. Thank you for watching from my first video on. I've gotten so many of them on there. It's crazy. But thank you, Greg. That's very kind of you. And, man, I'd love to come to the Toronto area one of these days. So what an interesting question. Did dinosaurs, Triceratops in particular, roll in the mud as a way to cool down? And, rolling in the mud also assists with parasite. It's a way to help reduce parasites as well. So did they do that? Well, there would be no way to verify that with certainty, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it doesn't make any difference that the animals are not alive today. What matters is whether the behavior would be effective for an animal that lived in the past. And for both reasons that they roll in the mud, both would be legitimate reasons. There's a third reason as well, by the way. Mud can also help mask your scent. And if scent is the factor that your predators are using to find you, it's an effective way to hide that scent. So they're rolling in the mud for suntan lotion, basically, to cool down, to kill parasites, and to cover scent. All of those things would be legitimate reasons for Triceratops to do the same thing and have the same behavior. So in my opinion, yes, I think they did. And that's a very good question, Craig. And it's nice to hear from you. All right. This is Frank from Stratford, Connecticut. Hello, Mr. Blossing. I'm glad that you're back. Hey, Frank, thank you so much. It's good to be back again. Please call me George or DG or Dinosaur George. I sincerely appreciate your respect and courtesy by calling me Mr. But truly, just call me George or whatever you're comfortable with. I'm so glad that you're back, and I hope you and Friends Book are doing well. All right, Frank, I'm coming to Stratford, Connecticut. It's going to be to hunt you down. All right, for those of you that don't know, I'm not hip and cool and up to date when it comes to all the different Snapchat and whatever else is out there, YouTube and Facebook and Go Fish, and I don't know, I'm just making some of these up. So one day, I made the horrible mistake of combining Friends. What was the one? Friends something and Facebook. There was two of them, and I combined them and said Friends Book. And I have paid the price forever for that horrifying mistake. And Frank, thank you for bringing it back up again. I promise you, one day I'll come to meet you, Frank. Oh, I'm coming. You better look over your shoulder, Frankie boy. Okay. His question is, how could a Tyrannosaurus possibly take down an Ankylosaurus? The only thing that I can think of is it flipping it's on its back, but I don't see how that's possible. Thank you for answering my questions, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Well, thank you, Frank. That's very kind of you, even though you're incredibly evil for bringing up Friends Book. That's very kind of you. So thank you for pretending to be kind. Okay, man, this has been a question that's driven me nuts too, Frank. It's one that's so hard. How did an adult Ankylosaurus, who could prey on an adult Ankylosaurus? Were they beyond predation when they reached a certain size? I think they might have been, Frank. I believe they would have been impervious to almost anything. I don't think an animal would have wasted a lot of energy attempting to kill one of these things because of all the body armor. And that short, squat body means that lifting it, rolling it on its back would be nearly impossible, because the center of gravity is right in the center of his body. All of the weight is confined there. The amount of energy and power it would take to turn that thing over would be huge. And of course, Tyrannosaurus wouldn't even begin to try to use his arms for such a feat. Could he use his head to do it? I don't know. I think the minute something approached an Ankylosaurus, an adult, a fully grown adult, it probably just squatted lower to the ground, which would have meant you just can't do anything. And so I don't think anything would have messed with adults. I just don't think that's possible. Now, when they're younger, I think they would have been in danger of being attacked. But I am of the opinion that once they reached adulthood, other than natural causes, they didn't have to worry too much about anything killing them. So thank you, Frank. It's good to hear from you, buddy. All right, Matthew from Nelson, South Island, New Zealand. Hey, DG, I'm a huge fan of your videos and your old show. Well, thank you, Matthew. That's very kind of you. Nice to hear from you. Would love to come to your country one of these days, Matthew. I'd love to visit New Zealand. All the pictures I see it's fantastic. So here's a question. If the Indominus Rex from Jurassic World was real and lived during the Cretaceous at the same time of Tyrannosaurus Rex, would T-Rex still be at the top of the food chain? Well, that's kind of a cool question. Now, if we look at Indominus Rex and the fact that he was a mixture of a variety of different dinosaurs, that could do one of two things, Matthew. It could either dilute it to where it's not going to be as effective because of all the conflicting stuff. In other words, a Tyrannosaurus Rex has been a Tyrannosaurus Rex for as long as Tyrannosaurus Rex has been around. Its parents had passed down information and teaching it and letting it know how it is. I mean, what you should attack and what you shouldn't attack. It would have all of those things for millions of years. That stuff would be passed down through the evolutionary process to where Tyrannosaurus Rex becomes a much more efficient predator because of all the learning experience that its predecessors have. Now, if you drop in this monster Indominus Rex, now this thing would come in with no learned behaviors whatsoever. It wouldn't have been, it wouldn't know what to attack, what not to attack, what is friend, what is foe. It wouldn't have any of those things. It would come in with a lot of weapons, and some advancements in weaponry would be about it. But think about this, Matthew. If you took somebody and you handed them nunchucks and you said, here, defend yourself with these, if you've never seen a pair of nunchucks, you wouldn't have the slightest idea what you would do with them. You couldn't even begin to guess. Or let's do with a crossbow. You're given a crossbow. You've never seen a crossbow. Yes, you've got a deadly weapon, but if you don't know how to load it, aim it, and fire it, then it's of complete no value to you. So if Indominus Rex were been created the way the movie showed, and he had all those cool weapons and all that advanced stuff, it would have been great, but it would have been completely useless because it wouldn't have the slightest idea how to survive. Now, just for the sake of argument, let's say all things are equal and Indominus Rex was a dinosaur that had progressed alongside of Tyrannosaurus Rex. Well, if you look at it that way, then it would be hard to compete with something like Indominus, just because it's got such big arms and big claws and all of those advancements. So if it were created and dropped in, it wouldn't survive a week. But if it was a real dinosaur who just throughout time, variations of predators kind of came together to make it, then it could be a very formidable thing. So that's actually kind of cool. All right, let's go to Michael from Lago Vista, Texas. Hello, Mr. Blassing. I'm glad to hear that you're back and that your travels have gone well. Thank you, Michael. Very kind of you. Same thing I'll tell you as I tell everybody, Michael. Call me George, DG, whatever you prefer. But I appreciate very much that you have such courtesy. Okay, I'm excited to hear more from the podcast as it's very informative and enjoyable to listen to. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. I hope to do a couple of more very quickly before I start getting busy again. So recently, Michael says, my family went on vacation and we stopped by a dinosaur track site containing over 500 tracks in Clayton, New Mexico. After some research, I found that most of the prints belonged to iguanodons or ornithomimids that were likely migrating along the western interior seaway. Based on several more sites containing the same tracks, this made me wonder, why would this group have migrated, considering that temperature gradient at the time was fairly low from the equator to the poles? My personal hypothesis is that they migrated to follow where the food was most readily available at the time, perhaps based on the wet and dry seasons. I say this based on famous wildebeest migrations of today. Thank you for taking the time to read this, and I hope you're doing well. Michael. Well, Michael, thank you very much for taking the time to write to me. I appreciate that very much. What an interesting point. We do see trackways that all lead in the same general direction. That would imply that dinosaurs migrated. Somebody even named it the Cretaceous Highway, where they're traveling back and forth up and down what was the coastline back then. Why do they do it? Well, probably two reasons. One, most important, is food. When you have these large groups of herbivores, whether it's a wildebeest or whether it's an ornithomimids or whether it's triceratops or whomever, if you live in large herds, you will eat yourself out of existence. And so there's no opportunity of survival because you've eaten everything. So you've got to migrate into new areas where the food that you eat is available. And by migrating out of the area you were, you give that food a chance, those plants a chance to grow back again. So that way it's a never-ending cycle. It's how evolution ensures that animals survive. But the other reason why they could be migrating could be nesting. You know, birds today often go back to the same place to nest year after year. And they usually choose those places because those places don't have the same amount of predators for whatever reason, whether it's climate or whatever it is. But we see that in the fossil record with dinosaur egg sites where they find layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of eggs that have been laid time after time, year after year, season after season. And that suggests that dinosaurs are coming to that place to lay their eggs. So I think migration is a necessity because it keeps you from wiping out your food source, but then also it may have also helped to work with them with eggs so that they're able to raise young. And the other reason why birds will come back time and time again is because the arrival of a food source in a given area is the main reason why animals want to go there to lay as well. It's not only the lack of predators, but it's the arrival of the food source. So for instance, if you are a iguanodon and your babies are born with weak jaws and need to eat only the freshest, youngest plants, maybe the area that you choose to go in time for the babies to hatch is when there's a huge renewal of that kind of plant material happening at that same time. It's the growth season for that material. And so you want your babies to be born at a time when they guarantee there's a big food source available for them. Same with insects, with a lot of birds. So they show up at a time that when the babies hatch, there's this mass hatch of insects, which gives them a ready food source. So that's what I believe could have been the case, Michael. All right, you guys, let me jump in and go right into this interview now with paleontologist Nathan Van Vranken, who's a good friend of mine, who's got some really, really interesting stuff to say. Really exciting. So let's take a listen, and I think you guys will enjoy this. Is an amazing way to find and meet new friends and keep you in touch with old friends. Well, I am able to keep up with some of the things that paleontologist Nathan Van Vranken is doing on Facebook, and it's like, it's not just being a cyber friend. I've known Nathan now for several years, and I've had the opportunity to see him on a number of occasions. And so I thought it would be great for you guys to hear about some of the stuff that he's doing. So Nathan, welcome to the show, man.
Hi, George. Thank you for having me.
You bet. It's great to hear from you. I just saw you in Dallas, last month, right? June?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So, okay. So to start off, Nate, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? What give us some information about you.
Well, as George already mentioned, my name is Nathan Van Vranken, and I am a paleontologist based out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Cool. Now, has Dallas always been home for you?
Dallas, I've only lived in this area for about 14, 15 years. I'm originally from upstate New York, and I came down to Texas to actually study paleontology.
Nice. So was paleontology, when you were young, was it something you've always loved, or is it something that you kind of grew into later on in life?
Paleontology has always been like my first major interest in science. And then once I got into college, then I started to learn that you can actually pursue this as a career. And that's what I went off and did. Went to graduate school at the University of Texas of the Permian Basin and got a master's in geology with an emphasis in vertebrate paleontology. With a topic dealing with mosasaurs.
You know, that it's funny when you go to your Facebook page, there's a giant mosasaur on your page, and of course, I've always known your love of mosasaurs. How did that begin? How did you discover mosasaurs, and then why were they sort of one of the things you like the most?
I think that one of the things that I really liked about mosasaurs was that they were a very interesting group. Over here in Texas, we have a lot of fossil collectors and a lot of deposits that are well known for producing mosasaur fossils. And so I took that interest and started to perfect it more and wanting to develop actual mosasaur-related research projects.
So have you had a chance to go into the field and look for mosasaurs?
As a matter of fact, yes. In North Texas, I have several fossil sites that have produced mosasaurs, and I also have some all the way down into central Texas.
Wow.
With a new fossil site.
Oh, mosasaur, you're fully aware of this. Dinosaurs seem to get about 95% of the attention. And in one aspect, when Jurassic World came out, of course, from a science perspective, of course, it's bunk. It's not scientifically and close. But I will say that as I travel around and speak to kids and I ask them who their favorite animal was, now mosasaurs seem to be front and center. Now, of course, if the kids want to talk about what they saw in Jurassic World, certainly that was a rather large mosasaur. But
yeah,
it did spark some interest. I'm always impressed with the sea life, and I tell people, you think the terrestrial animals were tough. Wander into the Cretaceous Sea and think about the stuff that was living there.
Exactly, and I like to add that the Cretaceous Seaway not only has these big mosasaurs, but they also had long-necked plesiosaurs. And then some of my newer research that is currently under review is trying to better understand these dolphin-like reptiles called ichthyosaurs and Middle Cretaceous large bony fish.
Do you think, when you look at the body design, now I'm just from the outside looking in because I've never put in the study that you have. When you look at a mosasaur, it appears to be such a streamlined looking animal that it looks like it could move at a real high rate. But then you compare it to that big, round, bulky body of plesiosaurs. Are those animals sharing environments? And is there any evidence that you're aware of that suggests that mosasaurs are hunting plesiosaurs?
There have actually been stomach contents and bite marks found on plesiosaur paddles believed to have come from a mosasaur. And it depends on what type of mosasaur you have. You probably would have more either specialized feeding, such as the shell-crushing teeth of a Golobidens, or more ambush-like predators, such as your Tylosaurus.
Man, I'm glad you bring that up. I'm so glad you brought that up. When people say, or when young kids especially say, I like mosasaur. Well, the term mosasaur is sort of the same blanket term when you say, I like pterosaurs, or I like the incorrect thing is they say, I like pterodactyl, as if that represents an animal. Can you talk a little bit about some of the different variety of mosasaurs? I mean, you just mentioned Golobidens. Explain a little bit about what that thing is.
Well, Golobidens is a mosasaur that evolved to eat invertebrates, so like your ammonites and probably the large pancake clams like Inoceremus that are found in the bottom of the ocean. And what they would do would be they would come along and grab the clam with their mouth and use these very specialized dome-like teeth and just break the shell apart and eat it.
Wow.
Then you also have the famous Tylosaurus, which had pointy teeth, a very pointed premaxilla, and achieved very large size. It was neither the fastest nor it was the biggest and strongest, but it was probably the most, I guess, stealth predator in the interior seaway. And then you also have Mosasaurus, which Jurassic World had, and then several other kinds.
Speaking about mosasaurs, this is an example to all the listeners out there. This is an example of why it is so good to have friends in paleontology. I have a traveling museum, and we had misspelled and misidentified one of our mosasaurs in our museum. And Nathan came through the museum. I think that was way out there. Was it in, where was that, in Midland or something?
I think so. I think that was going to school in Midland at the time.
Right. Nathan comes in, he's walking through the exhibit, he's looking at it, he's impressed, and then he comes up and goes, I think that's misspelled. And so,
yeah.
It was plate carpus. And so to this day, I laugh, and every time I set that thing up, I'm like, man, everybody look over your shoulder, because if Nathan's hanging around, he's going to bust me if I make another error. So
yeah, I felt really bad about pointing that out, but I was just like,
hey.
I don't think plate carpus is spelled with a Y unless it's the older, some kind of older spelling.
Yeah, no, you were dead. You were dead correct, man. I mispronounced its name. I thought it was platycarpus. And so when I Googled platycarpus to start doing some research for signage, it comes up because I think other people have made the same mistake that I've made in looking at the name and then misspelling it. And I didn't do my due diligence and go any further. I made the assumption, what a fool. And of course, when you're talking about scientific accuracy, man, thank gosh you stopped by, because if not, there could have been generations of young people thinking that's a cool looking little dude and then not being able to find any information on him. So I'll always appreciate that. Let me, on Tylosaurus, he's got that extension, the rostrum, I guess is the proper term, that extension of bone. Is that bone solid? Do you think it was for hydrodynamics? Was it a weapon to debilitate? Or do you think it was packed with sensors? Do you have any idea why it had that extension? Because not all mosasaurs have that, right?
Yeah, no, that's actually a pretty good diagnostic feature for Tylosaurines, which Tylosaurus belongs to. And yes, it's a very bony premaxilla. The feature has been debated several times in the literature. There's been times where people have thought that it was a battering ram, and that's how it would probably have helped take down certain prey items. And then sometimes some people have thought that it might have had ways to help censor things, but we don't have soft tissue preserved in around the premaxilla, so we really don't know. We just know that Tylosaurus had a really pointy premaxilla.
Right. Now, the most amazing feature to me is when he opens up that mouth and you see a secondary set of jaws up in the roof of the mouth. Has there ever been a consensus, or what is your opinion? What do those represent? Were they functional? What are they there for?
The second set of teeth inside mosasaur jaws are called the pterygoids. And modern reptiles also have these. So do snakes. And snakes are reptiles. But they help in aiding prey handling. So when a mosasaur is swimming around and he gets his jaws onto, say, a fish, and of course, these things don't have hands; they have paddles. So he can't take a paddle, reach it over, and shove the rest of the fish in his mouth. He moves his head around to get the prey item to go down his throat, and the second set of jaws help process the food as it's going down, so he doesn't choke.
Wow. So one last question about. Well, no, please go ahead. Continue if there's anything else you want to add.
And you can look at modern day things like monitor lizards and how their second set of jaws have very dense muscles around them. So if you get caught in these pterygoids, you're not getting back help.
Right. Well, the biggest question I've got about mosasaurs, because I've read back and forth so many different times, is it more closely related to snakes, to lizards, or neither?
I am very much in the mosasaurs are closely related to monitor lizards rather than snakes. Sure, we don't know how closely related they are to either group, but the evidence suggests that they are closer related to that of the monitors.
Right. Boy, they sure look like a giant swimming monitor. You know, everything about them just looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
And do they, oftentimes when they're posed in museums, and I'm very glad about this, you know, when I was a kid, all skeletons were always posed like stiff soldiers. Mm-hmm. No life to them at all. Well, now I see mosasaurs in these real dramatic poses. Are you able to determine by looking just at the skeletal design, would these have been very slinky, flexible animals, or are they swimming around more rigid? Like say a shark. You know, a shark, of course, has the ability to turn its body, but we never think of them as being, you know, real flexible looking, I guess. I mean, their tails always appear that way. What do you think mosasaurs are doing?
I think some of them had a degree of flexibility in their spines. But I don't think that they could, you know, coil themselves up like a snake would. Right.
And of course...
But they do have a advantageous swimming style, much like that of an eel, where they could swim very well without much effort.
Right. And do they appear to be more deep water animals, or are they hunting, you think, closer to the shore?
Well, George, that goes back to one of your previous questions, where we do have certain types of mosasaurs, like one that was recently published on from Japan, where it adapted to lower light environments, which means it hunted in possibly deeper water. But a lot of these mosasaurs fed towards the surface because that's where the fish are feeding off of the water column. That's where early seabirds might have gone and flew overhead, dived down in, and dived down into a mosasaur.
Man, how cool. You know, obviously they're air breathers, so that would limit them for how deep, I guess, they could go or for how long they'd stay. On that newly described one, has there been enough evidence to demonstrate a greater lung capacity? I mean, does it appear like its body would have been able to hold larger lungs to allow it to stay down for longer?
Unfortunately, there wasn't enough material on that one. There wasn't much post-cranial material, so we just have segments of the skull.
Right. Well, you know, paleontology is such a big field, and it's not all dinosaurs. You're a shining example of somebody that's focused a good percentage of your attention onto mosasaurs. But mosasaurs are not the only thing you study, and you've written a number of papers, right? First,
yes.
When we talk about writing papers, we hear that all the time, that a scientist has submitted a paper. And to the average person, that means Nathan found a bone, he wrote a paper and said, here's what I think it is, and it's that simple. What is it like writing scientific papers, and what are some that you've written?
Writing scientific papers is one of the things that I love the most about paleontology, is being able to go out and not only collect specimens, but also go into museum collections and learn not just about how to identify or classify the fossil that I'm interested in, but also I can learn about the history of the fossil. Now, there is a large research project I'm working on right now. I'm literally typing it out as I'm talking to you, George. But I am actually trying to develop a better understanding of Texas Cretaceous ichthyosaurs, and that's what I'm trying to help understand what they were doing in our state and how they became extinct in the Middle Cretaceous. And that involves going out, first off, finding these because they are extremely rare fossils, and going to different collections within Texas and comparing my specimens to ones that have been found in, say, the 1960s and the 1930s. and going in and not only comparing them, but documenting what they are, what formation they belong to, and what distinguishing characteristics, and trying to help build a better understanding of these animals.
So when you do this research, what happens then? I mean, you type it up and you go, okay, here you go, world, go ahead and read it. Or is there more to the process even after you've completed all of what you've put together?
Well, I would go, and after I'm done comparing the specimens and figuring out, then I analyze what I wrote down to see if there's any pattern in the data. And yes, in this paper, there is significant data about Texas ichthyosaurs. And once I interpret the data, then I go and present it at a local scientific meeting and subject my data to peer review, which is one of the best tools anybody can get, because it's not critique, it's just positive feedback.
So peer review is another set of eyes or sets of eyes looking at what you've done. And then once it's been reviewed by your peers, is it then published to the scientific community?
Yes, if I decide to go through and publish it. And a lot of times, yes, I go and once it passes peer review, then off to the journal it goes.
Wow. So what are some of the ones that you've worked on? What are some? I mean, obviously you're working right now on the ichthyosaur, which I thought was extinct at the end of the Jurassic in Texas. I didn't even realize we had ichthyosaurs in the mid-Cretaceous. That's pretty cool. So what other kind of papers have you been involved in?
Let's see. I am working on mosasaur PT scanning, a paper dealing with that, and trying to better understand their behavior. I'm working on my Texas ichthyosaur. I've worked on in the past mosasaur relationships, evolutionary relationships, and what else? Even invertebrates. I've gone as far as discussing about Pennsylvania invertebrate paleoecology of north central Texas.
Wow. So how do you determine the need or the interest for
writing? And I forgot about needlefish.
Oh, needlefish. Sorry. Those are kind of cool. Yeah. They're kind of cool, actually.
Sorry.
So how do
I
you...
just look down and there's a needlefish skull right here. I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot I was writing that one up.
So what determines then how you decide what needs to have a paper written? Is it a something that doesn't exist that you think needs to be addressed? Is it something you just find interesting personally, or do people come to you and say, hey, I wish more information existed about X?
Well, I think it's a combination of those three factors. There have been times when I go to my local fossil club and people have brought in specimens that they're not sure about. And I'll go and I'll do my best to identify them, but sometimes you'll just sit there and realize, no, I don't think that compares completely with what we know of that fossil. And so more work is done with that. Sometimes people will propose a question and no one is wanting to try to figure it out. And what I do, I strap my boots on and I try to go figure that out.
Now, you're not always spending your days and nights sitting behind a computer in an air-conditioned house while you work. You also get dirty, right?
Yeah, I go out and I do field work just like any other paleontologist.
So tell us a little bit about some of the different work that you've done, some of the different maybe places you've been and what you've been involved in that way.
Well, I've done excavations out in the Lubbock area of Texas looking for mammoths. I've dug all throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth region. The furthest north I've ever dug is in the famous Hell Creek Formation of southeastern Montana, and I'm starting to develop a fieldwork program to get ready to work in the Dakotas.
Wow. Man, I guarantee you so many listeners are so incredibly envious right now that you get to do all that stuff. Now, there's another dig site a whole lot closer to your home, a group that you're associated with. Can you tell us about the site there near Arlington?
Yes, the Arlington Archosaur site. I started working with them in about early 2010, late 2009, when I was working as for my mentor, Dr. Derek Main. And that site has uncovered all sorts of great new fossils. Things ranging from dinosaurs, crocodiles, lungfish, turtles, even a few different types of invertebrates and fish remains have been pulled from those sediments. And it's not too far from Cowboy Stadium.
Yeah, that's how nice is that? You know, the Arlington Archosaur site, I am horrible that I've yet to have a chance to go by there. I've so desperately wanted to go by there with some really good camera equipment and just shoot a bunch of video for those folks. Just, put it on a DVD just to capture some of the things that they're doing. Just watching and looking on Facebook and, Art Salstein is such a nice guy, and I kind of stay up on it through his Facebook page as well. Man, I'd love to get out there one of these days. The next time I'm up in that area and I've got a day off, I'd love to go with you and go look at it. It just sounds like a fascinating site.
Yeah, well, come on down.
Nice. Now, for everybody, I'll try to put a link on my page. The Arlington Archosaur site, if you guys want to do some research on it, it is ArlingtonArchosaurSite.com. Arlington Archosaur site, oneword.com. You've got to go there because it's really, it's a great website and it's got some really cool stuff. Plus, you can see information about Nathan on there as well. I think they've got your bio on there, right?
Yep.
Nice.
And if not, they can always hunt me down on Facebook.
And that's the other thing, is Facebook is a great way to find Nathan. It is Nathan, Nathan, Van, V-A-N, and then Vranken, V-R-A-N-K-E-N. We can find you on Facebook, also on Twitter's, right? You got a Twitter page as well, right?
Yes.
So on your website, by the way, I see on your Facebook page, dinosaurs are not your only interest in life. You have interest in, I think, sci-fi movies and anime and some of that. What are some of your...
yeah. Yeah.
Well, first, I got to tell you, almost every paleontologist I've ever met, one of the things that seems to tie us all together, us being, the public and you guys being the degreed paleontologist, is that we all have a love of sci-fi. So right now I'm going to put you on the spot. You can give me one answer, but you can't balk. You can't balk on this. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Nice. All right. Nice. Man, no hesitation at all. See, most of the time, people are always a little afraid to take one side or the other for fear it'll start a war. But, man, you didn't hesitate in the least, did you?
No, yeah. My top science fiction channel programs is number 1 is Star Wars, number 2 is probably the Alien or Aliens movie, number 3 would be Trek, or actually Doctor Who, and then number 4 is Trek.
Nice. And what about anime? Are you into anime? Do you enjoy anime as well?
Yes, I'm going to admit that is a side hobby. we're paleontologists. We got to have hobbies once in a while.
Right.
And so, yes, I do follow those. And you can see all my likes there on Facebook.
That's really cool. Do you ever get to go to any of the Comic-Cons anywhere?
Whenever one shows up around here, I'm usually in the field.
Oh, of course. Man. Well, I got to go to my first one, I guess about 5 years ago, and I got hooked. Now, I've always loved sci-fi, and I am a huge fan of the 40s, 50s, and 60s sci-fi movies. I enjoy them in black and white more than anything, and I record everything. So I've always loved that. But, man, I got to tell you, going to one of those Comic-Cons, holy smokes, it's pretty exciting, the stuff from DC. Ooh, that's the other question. DC or Marvel?
Marvel.
Nice. Cool. Now, let me ask you one last thing, because I know you're working on your paper. And this is the question we get from everybody. If a young person wants to be a paleontologist, realizing that paleontology is a big science and there's not a right or wrong way to do it. But if you were to give somebody an advice, if they wanted to be a paleontologist, what would it be?
I think most everybody would say go to college. And I wholeheartedly agree that you need to go to college and not learn just geology, biology, chemistry, the hard sciences, but also become more well-rounded in things like your writing and logical thinking. That will help you out a lot later in your career when you're working on research projects to help develop holistic approaches, basically solving all the loose ends in your research. And I also want to say link up with local paleontology or geology clubs or excavations. Try to get yourself out into the local community. Network. Go to conferences like SCP or your local Geological Society of America conference. Try to present research. Anybody can do research, but doing good research, you have to get yourself out there and network with other experts so that they can impart their knowledge to you. And just don't give up. And if you got the tenacity, you can pull this off.
That is sound advice. And one thing I want to reiterate, because you hit the nail on the head, is you've got to go to college to get a degree. And the reason for that is if you are going to be doing actual research, if you're going to be involved in research, it requires it. Okay. It helps tremendously. People will take you more seriously, and you won't have as difficult a time proving your knowledge when at least you've demonstrated that you've gone to college to get a degree. I don't have one. I never went to college to get a degree. That's why I never present myself as a paleontologist, even though that's what I do for a living. I'm a terrible example of how to become involved in paleontology. I lucked out because I found a niche that allows me to do it. But I'm not out there on the front line discovering new species and writing papers and any of that. And it would be difficult for me to do. It's not impossible, but it would be difficult. So Nathan's hits the nail on the head. And that is the best thing you can do for your career is go to college and get a degree. It doesn't guarantee you of anything, but it certainly is the right step, because if you don't do that, you take the long way around. And in my case, I didn't start doing this until 1997 is when I first started doing something associated with paleontology. So there you have it. You guys make sure and pay attention to his advice, because it was all very sound advice. You guys can find Nathan Van Vranken on Facebook, and you can find him on Twitter. I suggest you follow him on Facebook. There's a bunch of really cool pictures of some of the stuff you're doing. It has been such a pleasure talking to you again, Nathan. I enjoy our friendship, and I always enjoy seeing you. It's great catching up with you. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you get involved in some future projects that you'd like to share, I hope you can contact me and let us know, because we'd love to have you back.
Definitely, George.
Cool. And by the way, tell your mom I said hi. She's always so kind every time I see her. So please make sure and tell her hi. And Nathan, thanks a lot for taking time out. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you giving us your time.
Great. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
You bet, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
All right, you guys. Well, that interview was great. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed recording it. It was so much fun doing it, and Nathan is such an interesting guy, and his work, I expect to see really, really great things from him in the future, and I think you will all find that that's going to happen with Nathan. He's got such a bright future, and I think he's going to be absolutely great to be able to, he's going to make such an impact on paleontology. All right, remember, I am going to be in Gibbons, Canada, outside of Edmonton, August the 12th and 13th. Go to JurassicForest.com to find specific times and location and all that stuff and hours. If you guys are watching this podcast on YouTube, please follow and share with all of your friends. I would appreciate that very much. You guys can follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and you'll see links to all of that on my podcast page, which is which you can find through my website, dinosaurgeorge.com. There's a podcast page on there. While you're there, make sure and check out my catalog. I hope that you'll do that. All right, you guys, make sure to take care of yourself and all the people around you. The world is a much better place when we are decent to each other. So until next time, I am Dinosaur George, and you are not.
Thank you for listening to the Dinosaur George Show. Please follow us on our social media links and join our mailing list. If you're interested in having Dinosaur George speak at your event, please visit our website at dinosaurgeorge.com. Until next time, keep digging for clues about the past.